Hello retro gamers, welcome to Retro Pint. I would like to discuss this 8BitDo arcade stick and using it with analog devices, specifically configuring it perfectly to use with Street Fighter II Champion Edition for the PC Engine. For a while now I've been talking about getting a great 6-button configuration joystick for this game. Usually I'm using one of these, which has 2 buttons, of course, and the turbo. And I even tried buying this one. This is the M30, which has 6 buttons, and this almost works perfectly. The problem with it is that 2 of the buttons, these 2 buttons don't do anything, and instead the triggers work. So it's not really the perfect configuration for Street Fighter 2. Somebody mentioned that you can remap the buttons on the 8BitDo arcade stick. So I got one, and it is possible. I'm able to do it. I want to show you how to connect it, how to configure it, and how to do all of that great stuff. The very first thing to mention is that there are 2 versions of this arcade stick. There is what they call Switch and Windows version, and then they've also more recently released the Xbox version. The Xbox version works with the Xbox and not with the Switch. This is the Windows and Switch version. The coloring and styling kind of takes a lot of inspiration from the NES Advantage joystick. So I'm going to show you how to get it working right now. I'll show you how it works right out of the box, what's wrong with it, and then how to reconfigure it so that it works perfectly, where you just plug it in, pop in the game, and then the 6 buttons are going to work the way we want. That would be light punch, medium punch, hard punch, light kick, medium kick, hard kick. It is not configured like that by default, so there are some changes we have to do. There's some software that 8BitDo has on your computer that you connect your stick to your computer and then you reconfigure it. So I'll show you how to do that, but first I will show you how to connect it to this Duo here, and I'll show you how the buttons work by default. So the first thing to note is that we're going to connect it with 2.4G mode right here. This switch, it supports Bluetooth and 2.4G. And when we do turn it on, the dial here at the top says off S or X. S is for switch, X is for X input mode. So when we turn it on, we'll always be putting it in X input mode. So let's just get the sucker connected and show you what it does. So I'm just going to take the dongle, the 2.4G dongle, and plug it into the back of the Duo. Take the Street Fighter cartridge, plug it in. Let's turn it on. I will turn the controller to X input mode by turning the dial. Let me switch over to game mode. Perfect. So right out of the box, you'll notice that the controller works. These 2 buttons here, it's harder to see down there, A and B, are button 1 and 2. So you push B to start the game. I'm just going to use this controller to add a second player, just so we can go to the versus mode. I'll go to the options first and show you that. You can see here the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 button configuration. So what we're going to do is configure it so that this default configuration just works the way you would expect. So we won't touch any of that stuff. All right, versus battle. We'll just pick Ryu and Ken.
Round 1, fight!
Okay, so what we would expect is we want the punches up here and the kicks down here. So let's try it. That one's actually correct. I want that to be a medium punch, but it's a medium kick. We'd like that to be hard punch, and that one looks like it's correct as well. So those two are right. But that's medium kick, that's hard kick. This button does nothing, this button does nothing. And that means the medium punches over here. So we can see it's all not configured right. You could play it like this, but you'd have to kind of remember. So we're going to configure it perfectly, and I will now show you how to do that. Let's get to configuring this joystick. There are two things we need to do before we start. The first is we need to connect the joystick to the computer through USB. I used the cable that came with the joystick. It works perfectly fine. It plugs in underneath, and once you do plug it in, you see these red lights on the top here. The other thing we need to do is go to the 8BitDo support page and download the 8BitDo Ultimate software that is configured for this joystick. That's the name of the software. It's the Ultimate software. So let's visit these websites. I will put the links to them in the description of the video and check them out. So what they want you to do here is choose your controller to get the appropriate software. And you might think this is the one right here, but notice it says arcade stick for Xbox. That is not the correct one. Continue scrolling down to arcade stick. Once you're on this page, you can see this is the joystick that we have, and you download the Windows or Mac version depending on which computer you have. So once you've done that and you unzip it, you launch the software. Let's do that now. And here it is. It's asking us to connect the joystick. So what we do at this point, once it's connected to the computer, is you actually turn it on by putting the dial into X input mode, and then the software will detect it. Great. And what we see here is a picture of our joystick, labeling all of the buttons, and on the right, you see each of the buttons listed here, and on the right here is the action that will happen when you press that button. So the way this works is if I press the X button on the controller, which is here, what do I want it to do? Which button do I want it to press? You can change it to press A, for example. Now, if you press the X button on the controller, it will be as if you press A. So what we want to do is configure this so that when you plug this in to your Analogue Pocket or your Analogue Duo, the button configuration is perfect for Street Fighter without having to do anything else. So I have made a list, made a few lists here. The first list is what the buttons do by default in the default configuration. So what I have here on the left is the name of the button on the arcade stick and the numbered button of the action that it does from the TurboGrafx perspective. Now the buttons are labeled 1 through 6 on the TurboGrafx. So A button was 2, B button was 1, etc. Then I looked at the configuration of Street Fighter 2 specifically and looked at where the light, medium, and hard punches are and which number they were, and I wrote that down here. So I've determined what we want to do are the mappings listed below. So we want A to be Y. Let's just do it while we're talking. So we want to do this. We want to find the A button, and we want it to be Y. So let's do that. We want B to be A. So when you press B, it does A. Right trigger to B. Right trigger to B. If you remember when we tested, 2 of the punches were okay. So that was X and right button. So we need to do Y to left button. Okay, we'll leave the other one alone. I also wanted to configure the black buttons at the top to be select and run. So we do that by choosing the squares and the lines. These symbols are as if it was an Xbox controller. That's why it looks like squares and lines. And the other thing we mentioned was left trigger and left button. We don't want them to do anything, so we make that happen by choosing null in the list. And what we have here is a button mapping configuration that should be perfect for Street Fighter 2. Once we've finished with our configuration, you click the Sync to Device button. And it wants you to save the profile. So you can name this whatever you want. Let's call it Street Fighter 2. And click Create. And it says, please close the software to keep using the controller because the software has control of it, so it doesn't work. So you press OK and close it. And now our controller is configured to play Street Fighter 2 properly. Now let's talk a little bit more about those profiles. Okay, so you'll see that it knows that I was on the SF2 profile. You can go back to the default profile by hitting the drop down, hitting default profile, sync to device, and close the software. Now the button configuration is back to the way it was by default. So we can turn it back on. There we go. Now I even created one before that has the same button mappings. So I call it Analogue TG16 _ SF2. They actually create a text file on your computer that saves this button mapping. And they put them in this folder here. So if I take a look at that file, the one that I created before, you can see the button mappings are right here. A to Y, B to A, R2 to B, they're all here. And what you can do instead of mapping them manually is you could create an INI file with this text in it and put it in this folder. And then when you open your software, it would already be in the list for you to choose from. So I'm going to share this this text either in the description of the video or in a comment, so that if you want to do it that way, you can. But otherwise, you can just map them the way I did. I like having the profiles because if I want to use this arcade stick on my Windows computer again, I can just come in here, load up my Windows profile or the default profile, click sync to device, and we're good to go. And you can swap back and forth pretty easily. So I'm going to make sure I've configured the Street Fighter 2 configuration. And now we can go back to the game and see if it works properly. Now that we've used the 8BitDo software to configure the controller properly, let's get back into the game and I can show you how it works. Since we moved where button 1 and button 2 are, we now have to use the new buttons B and right trigger to interact with the menu, whereas before it was A and B. That's simple enough. I also forgot to mention in the first part that the blue button at the top, the heart button, does work to bring up the menu. And that was true before with the default configuration, not just afterwards. So let's get into the game. Connect the second controller. We'll go to versus battle. And again, we'll launch our classic Ryu versus Ken. But this time, let's pick end stage. There it is.
USA. Round 1, fight.
Okay, let's try the buttons. Light punch, where we'd expect. Medium punch, where we expect. Hard punch, where we expect. Good kick, medium kick, and hard kick. And we did not go into the configuration and change anything. We've also moved start and select, select and run to these two buttons. So the reason I want to have this 6-button configuration, and even with an arcade stick, is I like to be able to practice using the arcade stick for doing the fireballs and the dragon punches. And it's not the easiest thing to do. You have to learn and practice, and I'm much better with the D-pad. But, you know, let's just do it. Try and do the Dragon Punch. Or we can throw him, one or the other. There you go. So the more I can do this, you know, the more I can practice. And this is great. This is exactly what I wanted. 6-button configuration. So I can play Street Fighter 2, the PC Engine version. I also wanted to demonstrate that the same configuration for the arcade stick works on the Analogue Pocket. So I've set up my Pocket here, and the same thing, I've connected the dongle to the USB port on the back of the dock. So let's show that it works now. Load up the game. Here we go. I'll choose Ryu. Oh, we get Ken again. Awesome. Let's see if I can test all the buttons before he goes ham on us. So light, medium, hard punches are right. Light, medium, hard kicks are also right. Perfect. Oh, got the Dragon Punch, huh? Let's see if I can get him. Oh, he's gonna start doing Dragon Punches. It's going pretty hard on me. There we go. Oh, is he gonna start doing them all the way? Yeah, you can get him inside. Perfect. So if anybody has any questions, please leave a comment, and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you have any questions about the configuration or anything like that. Well, thank you very much for watching.